Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Some of you have asked me what I've done to the Canadian pillow, if I got rid of it. No, I didn't. It was just behind me, just moved it around. The UK pillow now is behind me. And that new pillow, that's not a Chinese emblem. It's the flag of the Kingdom of Wessex, which was, in south of England before the Norman conquest in 1066. It's a dragon. Anyway, today, aside from looking at the markets briefly, I will talk about why President Nixon is to blame for all the trade imbalances we have today, for all the huge amount of debt that we have in the US, in the UK, and throughout the world, especially Europe. Other countries are not to blame. China, the EU are not to blame for the trade imbalances. The US and President Nixon especially is to blame. And I'll show you some charts and why it's happened. So first of all, though, let's look at what the markets are doing this morning. It's 8:05 a.m. London. So we've got spot gold, 1243.70. That's up $1.80. It has been as low as 1238 and as high as 1244 overnight. Silver, of course, got hit very hard yesterday. We're now at 1591. It's been as low as 1577 overnight, and now it's up 6 cents. The Dow is up 70 points, or just under 1/3% at 24,376. S&P up 5, 22,730. Nasdaq 100 future is up 17 or 1/4%. Currency-wise, we are seeing the not much move this morning. Pound is up 15 pips or 0.12%, 131.58. The euro is up 0.1% at 116.52. The dollar is up 0.17% against the yen at 111.08. Sorry, we've seen the big move in the Chinese yuan. It's dropped quite a bit. Let's say that since the end of April, $1 was buying at the time 627 or 630. Now it's at almost 670. So the dollar has gone up a lot. Some people argue that it's the Chinese fighting back against trade wars or threats by Trump to impose tariffs. So why do they do that? Well, it makes their currency worth less, and it makes it compensates for possible higher tariffs from the U.S. And that's what I want to talk about today. Why China or Europe, they're not to blame for this. The country that runs the monetary system, that leads the world, the WTO, all the trades, the reserve currency, is the United States. And it's been since Bretton Woods, and it's been since 1971 when President Nixon closed the gold window or withdrew the anchor from the monetary system, and basically has created this massive Frankenstein, really, a monster of a system that we have. And I'll show you some charts to prove that. Before, though, I'll look at, I've got some data here from the Economist magazine, and we're going to look at current account balances, right? It's towards the middle of that this arrangement of data. United States current account balance in the latest 12 months, minus 465 billion, right? And then you look at China, plus 121 billion. Japan, plus 196 billion. And then you look at the euro area, plus 485 billion. And out of that, Germany, of course, has 322 billion. So that's what's going on. The United States is basically spending beyond its means. It's got like running a current account balance negative, almost $500 billion. Even little Britain is running out minus 106 billion. Show you historical data now. So we've gone through and we see that yes, the euro area and China and Japan are running huge trade current account surpluses. But we'll see why, in my opinion. And I said blame Nixon. Why blame Nixon? Well, because Richard Nixon took the whole world off the gold standard in 1971. And he even said in 1971, after taking the US off the gold standard, Nixon was quoted as saying, "I am now a Keynesian in economics." So yeah, blame those guys. All the PhD economists we have nowadays. Let's look at the historical current account of the United States, right? The number that's almost $500 billion now. So I've got data here from Trading Economics, and we don't even have to look at the numbers per se, right? We have to look at what happened. If you can see there, it starts from, let's see, 1960, right? Look how that line was always around zero, even in 1969. And then after Nixon took the US off the gold standard, look how it started moving up and down, up and down. And, since 1980, it's been almost a one-way move, of current account deficits. There was a surplus in the early 90s, but you can see there's no balance, right? And so that was, and you can clearly see that it started moving around a lot. When they went off gold, floated all the currencies against nothing. That's the problem. You see, you let the currencies float. There's no anchor. There's no sound money. That's what we get. So now I want to look at trade balance. The trade deficit that we talk about, and this is even more clear for everyone to see. And this is from 1950, and you can see that up until early 70s, again, that 1971 date. The U.S. ran a balanced trade account. There was trade balance. The trade was balanced. There was no deficit. But ever since then, look what's been happening. And it's actually kind of decreased a little bit, as you can see on the chart. I think these are monthly data. So the U.S. has been able to spend beyond its means. Yes, President Trump wants to rectify this, but it hasn't been all negative. But as President de Gaulle once said, the U.S. has the exorbitant privilege of being able to print its own money without really backing it by anything. And that's the consequence of this, these huge trade deficits, huge current account deficits. It's unhinged the whole world. And from 1950 to 1971, it was pretty much balanced. So that means as well that on the other side, the other countries were balanced as well. So that's what I'm trying to say. Don't blame, all the countries are doing now is because under a fiat dollar system, they need to earn the dollars. And if they want to stay in the system. So they have to try to run these surpluses. But when the system was on gold and it was anchored, that didn't happen because you had to settle your debts, and you can't settle your debts with irredeemable paper. So that's the whole problem with the system. What else did I want to look at? Yeah, the national debt as well of the U.S. Again, that dates of the early 70s there. You look at this chart since 1950, what the U.S. national debt has done. Politicians have benefited from it. The military industrial complex has benefited from it. even though there's even some people who argue there's an extra 21 trillion that they stole. President Trump is doing nothing to improve that. Is this China's fault? Is this the EU's fault? Is this Japan's fault? I guess partly because they're playing the game, but the leader is the United States. And one can clearly see that this has happened because we went off sound money. And yes, I go on a lot about gold and silver, not because I think we need to have gold and silver personally to be rich or anything. I mean, personally, individually, it is a protection, of course, but the bigger picture is even more important. Gold and silver are even more important, or sound money, because it balances things. It's real money. What we've got now, as I said earlier in the video, is a Frankenstein of a system that is unsustainable. So yeah, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Don't blame other countries for this. Blame Richard Nixon and the people who advised him to go off the gold standard, which was a huge mistake. And who were those people? Well, Paul Volcker was in there. I even think John Exter was kind of consulted by Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker was a Treasury official at the time. Worked for the Fed, worked for major New York banks. So these are the people to blame. And that's why Paul Volcker had to come back in 1980 and fix, the mess that he created. So yeah, some people say that Paul Volcker is a great central banker and he's done the right things, but I don't think so. I think, he made a big mistake in 1971. Also, Henry Kissinger. He's perpetuated this system by negotiating with the Saudis and creating the petrodollar. So there you have it. And the talk of petrodollar, I wanted to say that oil prices are still highly elevated. We're up, we're almost at $74 now in WTI. So it's up 1%. So yesterday we had a correction in commodities, but oil is still really, really strong. The Chinese oil contract, Chinese yuan oil contract, still is going well. You can see here it's traded 240,000 contracts today, the September contract, which is the 1809 here. So yeah, doing very well. So that's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on DTube, Steemit, and on Twitter. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.